Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Now that we've welcomed the army into our everyday life, the government, Boris Johnson, has warned that if we don't follow his rules, then tougher measures will be likely. How convenient. Yes, it's very much a Trojan horse situation, isn't it? This is why I do not trust using the army in domestic life. They are there to kill people, they are there to defend borders, they are there in times of war. If you are putting them amongst your own civilians, I'm very careful in whether or not I accept them. And now that you're suggesting that tougher measures are likely, it seems to me as if you are expecting riots to erupt just like they did in London a few years ago, and therefore you've got the army in there to crack down on people harder than the police will, because the army don't take prisoners like the police do. They're subject to different rules and regulations than the police are. So yes, of course, they're great with domestic relief, disaster relief for domestic or for abroad, and they might be a great role model for younger people, but I am far too concerned about martial law to be okay with it. And following that, now that Boris Johnson is saying that tougher measures are likely if you don't follow our advice, it seems like that is just the next step. And that's when it comes down to the difference between advice and orders. That he's saying, hey, it'll be really great if you do this. It's for your own best interests. This is our recommendation. We think that this is best for you. You should do this. You go, okay, cool. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I've weighed it up myself. And I think that this is reasonable advice. For myself, not fitting. I've got things that I really need to be doing. And therefore, I've taken your advice into consideration. And despite that, I'm still going to get on with my life because I think that's better for me. That he's now saying, yeah, well, the advice isn't actually advice. It's actually an order, but we're just using a different word so that it seems less totalitarian. And that, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. The difference between an advice and an order is enforcement. That is it. So if someone gives you advice, then if you don't follow it, you think, okay, cool. I can explain myself to them and they should be understanding that, hey, I did something else. I can explain to them how I understood what they asked me to do and what they thought was best, but I decided against it. But if somebody gives you an order and you go against it, then obviously you know that you have to answer for yourself and that repercussions will be in store for you. And the same goes here. So, it's tougher measures. Boris Johnson has warned tougher measures could be introduced if people do not take the government's coronavirus advice seriously, as in don't do exactly what they're told. The PM thanked people for making sacrifices, but said people must follow social distancing guidance. If you don't do it responsibly, we will have to bring forward further measures, he said. Yes, if we don't do what we ask you to do, you will do what we tell you to do. It comes as the number of UK deaths reached 281, including a person aged 18 with an underlying health condition. They are thought to be the youngest person with the virus to have died in the UK so far. So it's not just old people, it is anybody with underlying health conditions. In China, it is particularly the smokers, that's why the older men are most affected, because smoking takes years to kill you, if not decades, and therefore, because it's a respiratory illness, same as SARS, which was also a coronavirus, it's killing off the men predominantly. But then in Western countries where we have the problem of abundance and therefore obesity and diabetes, then that is the underlying health condition and can affect people who are younger. And that is what we're finding here with someone as young as 18 dying. And let's not forget that with coronavirus fears spreading the NHS thin, other people who need help don't get it. So somebody dying of malaria for having to wait 48 hours doesn't get the treatment that they need through their socialised health service in the UK, and they ended up dying of malaria, of all things, because the NHS is stretched too thin, as always has been. So we're closing the borders. Kind of, yes, in a way, it seems that we've decided to now close the borders, so jolly good, well done. Maybe there'll be a nationalist resurgence after this, so every cloud has a silver lining. But hey, if the government can blame the people instead of taking responsibility, then of course they're going to do that. Which comes back to, why is there a government in the first place? It is because the government reflects what the people want. They don't have opinions of themselves, they just enact what the people ask them to do. The minute that they try to blame the people for doing things wrong, at that point, it is when it becomes authoritarian. When the government forgets that it's the people that put them in charge and think that they are in charge of the country instead of doing what the people want and organising it, when they think that they're making their own decisions, that is when it all falls apart. It either becomes authoritarian, in which case it's got to be totalitarian, so that the citizens have to abide by what the government says, or it ruptures, it splinters, and it breaks down because nobody is willing to do what they're told. So unless you've got military might in order to enforce order, which is why they hate the citizens and the denizens of their country arming themselves, because then you can defend yourselves. If you don't have that armament, then you are forced into whatever they want you to do, at which point they are no longer doing what you tell them to do, but you have to do what they tell you to do. And that is not what a government should do. Governing, by its very essence, is enacting the will of the people, not forcing the will of the people to bend to the government's will. With that in mind, the rise of 48 deaths on Saturday includes 37 in England, 7 in Wales, 3 in Scotland and another in Northern Ireland, which brings the number of UK cases to 5,683. The NHS said all those who died in England in the past day were in vulnerable groups, including with underlying health issues. And that is the case with any time with a contagious virus like coronavirus. It isn't something innate, but it is something foreign, and therefore it is something that wishes to thrive and survive within human bodies, in which case it doesn't want to kill its host, but instead it wants to spread itself as far and wide as possible, and therefore it's going to only kill off the weaker people, because if a virus is too lethal, then of course it is going to kill people before it can spread to infect other people, and that is not in its own best interest. So it wants to get as far and wide, but still live, of course, in which case it's going to be killing off the weakest people of the population. But, Darwin's natural selection and survival of the fittest isn't his law, it's a law of nature. It's his theory, it's his proposition, but it is still enacted in nature nonetheless. It is something he observed, not something he created, and that is what we're seeing here. So that isn't a judgment statement on the value of humans' lives, but it is nonetheless how viruses and bacteria, how pathogens interact with people. The weakest will die. At some point, everybody has to die. The only thing certain in life is death and taxes. Unless you got lobbying, in which case it's only death. But still, nonetheless, death is certain. You are going to die of something at some point. And although we've been able to wipe out so many different ailments of which you could possibly die from, and old age is no longer a thing to die from, it's basically now cancer or coronary heart disease, if you are a vulnerable group and weaker, when something else comes up like this, you will be killed by it. Because in decades, maybe centuries gone by, you would already be dead because of some other illness. Now we've been able to cure those, like polio, for example, so you're no longer dying of it, and therefore you're just waiting to die from cancer or coronary heart disease. Now you're going to die of coronavirus. So you're still living longer than expected, but you're going to die before cancer or CHD kills you. That's basically it. And I know that sounds cold and calculated, but at some point you've got to get down to the brass tacks and say, well, that is the fact of the matter. With that in mind, what are the tougher measures? So, speaking at Downing Street's daily news conference, Mr. Johnson told people going to parks they have to do that responsibly. It comes after pictures showed people across parts of the UK visiting parks and open spaces in large numbers over the weekend. Snowdonia National Park said the area experienced its busiest ever visitor day in living memory on Saturday, with other beaches and mountain summits busy. Well, I think that's fantastic. It is about time we got back into nature, and I've been saying that for a long time. If you can get into national parks, considering you can fit the entire global population into the state of Texas, if we spread ourselves out amongst national parks and green areas, we are still going to be keeping our social distance, and it isn't going to be a problem. Seeing that only a single-digit percentage point of the United Kingdom is actually urbanized and covered and paved, then we can all exist in nature without a problem. So there might be particular hotspots, if you will, but once we can branch out of those car parks, there isn't really a problem. We can find different ways into the national parks and spend some time there. Then I say again, there isn't a problem. If people want to get back into hunting in order to enact their primal instincts and also ensure that they're not running out of food, then so be it. Of course, check your local laws and requirements so that you're following the law during your hunting. Then of course, please do. But nonetheless, there is enough space for all of us to exist in nature, so we can go do that. Seeing as that Mr. Johnson said, my message is you've got to do this in line with the advice. You've got to follow the social distancing rule. Keep 2 meters apart. We can easily keep 2 meters apart with us using the national parks all around the country. We can do that. I mean, there are plenty of 100-mile hikes if you want to spend a week out just walking around slowly but through nature. Take a load of food with you. If you've got 2 people traveling, if you're with yourself and your other half, your couple, one of you carries all the essentials for cooking and camping and sleeping and all those arrangements, and the other one carries the food, in which case their load gets lighter as it goes on, so probably the woman carries the food because it gets lighter. Then go ahead, do that. And then you can survive out, and it'll be a lovely getaway for a week, and you can do that. And you're going to stay 2 meters away from everybody else. It doesn't matter. That will definitely happen. Then, of course, do that. And that is very easy to understand, given that we live 2 meters apart from everybody else, even in tower blocks, and therefore there is easily that much space in the countryside, given that there is more countryside than urbanized area. So yes, you can do that. Just don't be a fucking idiot in trying to suggest that we can all go to urbanized parks at the same time, because of course we can't. Of course we can't. But get nature, get some greenery, get some lovely law reform inside of you. Okay, maybe don't eat grass. But get the vitamin D, get the vitamin D3, the things that alleviate depression, the things that get rid of anxiety, the things that make you feel better and can get back to work in a productive way. And I don't mean go back to the same job that you've had before. I mean work on something that is meaningful to you. Because work is important. You do have to work. Not because of money, although that is a necessity most certainly, but because that is what will give your life meaning. It is that feeling of growth and that you are contributing and helping the society, and they are showing their appreciation through financial remuneration that they are paying you. That is what is important. So yes, work. It is important. So he says, it's so important that pleasure and that ability is preserved, but it can only really be preserved if everybody acts responsibly and conforms with those principles of staying apart from one another and social distancing, easier to do in the nature. If we can't do that, then yep, I'm afraid we're going to have to bring tougher measures. In which some parks have already announced they will be closing. Essex County Council will close all its country parks from 8 o'clock p.m. GMT, while earlier Richmond Park in London closed to traffic on Sunday, although those on foot and cyclists were still allowed. Also shutting all McDonald's restaurants in the UK, which will all be closed by 7 p.m. GMT on Monday. So start your home cooking, get some dried food, get some beans, start eating beans, learn to cook some new things. I know there are plenty of sources around. Sorted Food, a UK-based cooking YouTube channel, is doing some Instagram specials as well to help people through their coronavirus, so I recommend them. And they will help you to cook things that are delicious and nice and nutritious during the quarantine with whatever limited supplies you have. So check out Sorted Food if you're looking for cooking. But otherwise, yeah, head into the wilderness, take a trancher, understand what you can eat and what you can't, go on a psychedelic trip while you're at it. Why not? Understand the local laws on snares and hunting as well, so that you can still eat meat if you're craving it while you're out there because you can't take a fridge, and make the most of it. And Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, let's not leave her out, said the new measures to prevent the spread of coronavirus should not be considered optional. Correct, they should not be considered optional. Thank you, totalitarianism. Life should not feel normal, she said, and if it did, you should ask if you're doing the right things. Yes, and also with the rationing happening in supermarkets, because it's limited to per shop instead of per person, that it's like, oh, I'm gonna help out this care home, this nursing home, the old people in my village, whatever it might be. I'm gonna help out all of them. I know they don't want to get out, so I'm gonna leave them tin food, dried food, whatever it is, milk. I'm gonna leave them that on the doorstep because hey, they deserve it, and I want to give back to the community. So I'm gonna make a list of all the people I'm gonna go to, and whatever it might be used to deliver newspapers to them, or you know them from a club, a tennis club, for example. It might be, yeah, I'm going to deliver to all of them because I think it's a nice thing to do, and if they like it, then they'll pay me, and if they don't, then I'll know not to deliver to them again. It's a risk I'm willing to take because I want to do something good. So, these are all the people. I'll fill up my trolley in order to help them out. You get to the checkout, and they say, yeah, it's only 3 tin tomatoes per shop. So, okay, that's fine, but I'm shopping for these, 24 people, and they could do with a tin or 3 each, because it's per person, isn't it? So, these are the people I'm going to. I can give you the names and addresses in order to make sure that I can get these 36 or 72 tins of tomatoes, for example, because they're only 40p each, so it's not much to you, because I'm trying to help out the old people. To which they'll say, no, it's per shop, so you can only get 3. It's like, oh great, so I can help out one old person for half a week. Any suggestions on what I do for the other people? So, well, yeah, you come back the following day. It's fine, it's limited to 3 per day. So, great, so I have to come back every day just to top up on tin tomatoes and some other dried food and milk and eggs, for example, and bread and flour. Really? So now this is going to be my full-time job instead of allowing me to stock up because I'm trying to help out other people. Like, yes, that is it. So, okay. Probably won't bother then. And this is really where price gouging comes down to it, when people put in roadblocks like this. And you go, well, yeah, you can't have it. At all. So I have to pay more. No. Interesting. In which case, I'm going to go to a load of different stores, buy them up. Obviously, that's a cost to me, and I want to cause a profit. In which case, I'm going to sell them at a much higher cost to other people, and other people are going to call that price gouging, but that's actually just turning a profit and being of sound business mind. So the same goes there. If you try and help people, now you're being reprimanded for it, because, hey, minimum wage employees don't understand, and why should they? They just get told what to do and don't question orders, because they're not paid enough to question orders. They're barely paid enough to follow orders, and they work hard enough to stop being fired because you pay them enough to stop them from quitting. And that is it. But for everybody else, hopefully you can stock up. You can be creative enough. As I say, Sorted Food, very entertaining YouTube channel anyway, so check them out. They're on Instagram, of course. 4:30 p.m. Some free shelling here every night. GMT 4:30 p.m. If you're looking for some inspiration for cooking and making what's left in your pantry, in your cupboards, in your fridge, in your freezer, and whatever you call it, go ahead. But until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, keep eating some good stuff, enjoy nature, enjoy the time off, keep your 2 meters away from people, even though it spreads 5 meters and lasts for half an hour when the person's gone. But who cares about facts when the government's involved? So stay healthy, stay safe. If you're young, you're not going to be affected anyway, but nobody wants to get ill. So have a good one.